Uh, Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to wave on to the committee and join the conversation. I want to thank the witnesses and to my friend, Mr. Huizinga. I'm happy to go long. I've been there before. So anyway, thank you guys very much. We've talked a lot about NATO, and the NATO alliance is truly one of the remarkable accomplishments of the last 80 years and is unprecedented in global history. At this moment, with so many countries coming together, united to defend each other, but also to defend democracy in the free world. And as we've discussed here today, we need to make sure that not only Finland, but Sweden is able to join NATO. When the Cold War ended, the need for the alliance was questioned. A few could even conceive of the possibility of a land war in Europe, but Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine has made it clear that the free world needs to work together as much as ever, and that America must lead, as we have over the past year and a half. Ukraine's fight has been an inspiration from the day it was invaded, and President Zelensky's refusal to leave Kiev and to lead his nation has been an inspiration to the world. It's been our privilege to support the brave Ukrainian warfighters who sacrificed and continue to sacrifice each and every day. This war will end when the guns stop firing, but the peace can only begin once Ukraine has ironclad guarantees of its independence and its security. What I'd like to ask both of you is, can you touch on what is significant and what potential guarantees would help Ukraine, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of providing those guarantees?
I think I'll talk briefly about NATO and then pass it to Deputy Assistant Secretary Cooper. NATO, of course, provides security guarantees only to NATO allies, of which Ukraine is not a member. But what NATO is looking to do is to send rather through this longer-term package of support at NATO, an indication of its commitment to support Ukraine in its struggle in the way that it can, primarily through its non-lethal assistance, to complement the bilateral lethal assistance, and to make that commitment not only sort of year to year as it has been done so far in the past, but to talk about a much longer-term commitment to indicate the long-term NATO support for Ukraine.
And then, Congressman, I'll just fill in from the bilateral perspective, which complements this NATO perspective on how to assure Ukraine in the long term. The United States, but also other allies, are considering how we can convey that long-term support. And it's a security issue, so it's an issue for my department when you think about ensuring the viability of the Ukrainian armed forces in the long term. But it's also important to note that this is an economic and recovery and reconstruction issue as well, and that's where you see, allies and partners coming together in London to talk about reconstruction. So we are engaging in these conversations, privately, and we are working on how we might be able to provide this kind of support.
Great, thank you. And expanding the view, or expanding the focus for a second, the other gray zones, independent from Russia but within striking distances. For example, Georgia and Moldova. What should we do in those circumstances?
Congressman, I spend, when I'm not thinking about Ukraine or Russia, I tend to be thinking about Moldova and Georgia a good deal. What we have seen is very different in both countries, but in both cases, we have, during this period of crisis, have redoubled our effort to have strong military-to-military ties and to maintain our support for these countries to be able to defend themselves, recognizing that the threat is quite real. I'll leave it at that.
Great. Ambassador.
I just wanted to add that following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, NATO realized that some of its partners were at risk to Russian malign influence, and that includes Georgia, Moldova, but also Bosnia-Herzegovina, and it has initiated tailored packages for each one to help them resist malign influence. And also, the alliance will be inviting the foreign ministers of these three countries to come to the summit to meet with NATO foreign ministers as a sign of support for them and the special focus on them as at-risk NATO partners.
Great, thank you. My red light's on, so I'm out of time, but I would be negligent if I didn't mention I am the co-chair with my friend Joe Wilson of the Bulgaria caucus, and if we had more time, we would talk about the Balkans as well. Thank you. I yield back.